How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Early morning, but pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just gonna go through some questions just to give you the basic rundown. Usually
Sure.
about an hour. Okay.
Okay.
So let's see. What has been going on in your life recently that either you expected or didn't expect, or both, if you want to go
Okay.
into both. Yeah.
Okay. Is this a question I'm going to answer now?
Yeah. You can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'm
Yeah.
confused. But yeah.
No, you're.
I don't know. I guess what I didn't expect was that I would really enjoy doing podcasts and building this kind of online presence because I never expected that because I've been doing one-on-one therapy for pretty much my entire career. And I found out that I'm not as much of a private person as I thought I was because I'm completely open to sharing whatever's going on in my life and talking to people about it. And even if sometimes it feels like you're just kind of screaming into the void, it's enjoyable. It's been very surprising.
Yeah. I think even with podcasts, I thought I was the most private person ever, and I'm like, then I started sharing my life like online. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, so yeah. All right. What's something that's been on your mind recently?
The thing that's been on my mind recently has actually been my mom a lot lately because she's not around anymore. She passed away in 2005, and that she didn't pass away. She committed suicide in 2005, and I've been talking a lot about that and how suicide prevention is such an important topic and how you when you think about those things and those kind of things that suicide is a long-term solution to what generally is a short-term problem. And I've been just thinking about her a lot lately because it's my sister's birthday is coming up. I'm going to be spending time this weekend with my dad and those kind of things. And I was kind of thinking a lot about what would she think about this phase of my life right now with my kids and my wife and doing all this stuff and translating all this knowledge and information that I gathered over the course of my life into like a course and stuff to help other people break out of their own people pleasing and trauma and all those different kind of things.
If you don't mind me asking, is that like why you do like therapy? Like because of that,
No,
or
that happened while I was already became a therapist. I became a therapist because I went through a lot of bullying as a kid, and I had my own anger issues because of it, and my parents put me in therapy because of that, and then and going through the therapy process myself and realizing, oh, there's names for these things that I'm feeling. Oh, there's different feelings. It's not just happy, angry, and sad. There's more than that. Oh wow, okay, that's interesting. And that really started my love affair with just kind of trying to figure out the puzzle that is people, because we all come from the same place. We all grow up. We all become, come from being babies and all this stuff. Yet where we all go is so different and so varied that it's amazing the way we view things, process things, understand things, the way we look at the world and understand the world. I mean, it's one of the common things that when I talk to people is it's like right now there's 8 billion plus people on the planet, and every single one it thinks the planet Earth is their planet. So there's literally 8 billion plus stories happening simultaneously, and our job as society and as people is to connect with each other and figure out what's working, what's not working, how is what I'm thinking affecting what you're doing, and how is what you're doing affecting what I'm thinking, and that kind of combination of things.
I'm like, what is one way you think people can like maybe connect with
Mm-hmm.
like one another to like maybe I guess solve like bigger issues, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like for example like climate change or something like
Yeah,
something like that. Like, what do you think?
really, it's conversation. It's learning to not be afraid of other people's ideas because everybody's ideas have merit in some fashion. You just have to find those common points where you connect. And it's one of the hardest things that we do as people is we get so stuck in our own head and our own story of the way things should be, the way things have to be, the way things ought to be, that we then can't hear what other people are saying or we don't want to because it rubs us the wrong way. But even when it comes to people that we disagree with, trying to find common ground even within the disagreement, because it's impossible that in any conversation you have with someone that you 100% disagree. there's always at least 1% somewhere where you can be like, well, I guess I could see that, but I still don't agree with it.
And then, like, also, how do you think people can have these, like, so-called uncomfortable conversations
Mm-hmm.
with one another?
Well, the first thing is admitting that it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's,
Definitely.
it's because if you don't admit that it's uncomfortable, then you're both just playing a game, pretending like this isn't an uncomfortable conversation, when really it's like, yeah, is this uncomfortable? Yeah, this is kind of uncomfortable. Okay, good. We got that out of the way. Now let's keep discussing it. Because that's one of the things, right? The basics of problem solving is first identify there's a problem. So if you never identify that you're having a problem or that you're having certain feelings and you're not willing to discuss that with the other person, then you can't move forward. Then you just might as well just continue to talk about the weather and whatever happened with your latest local sports team or whatever superficial stuff you want to do. But it is in getting into those in-depth conversations, where they always say, hey, don't talk about politics, religion, the economy, money, your finances when you're with people, because it's a hot button topic. But it's those conversations that's where our humanity is. It's in those conversations of saying, hey, I'm uncomfortable about this topic, but I want to understand why you think the way you do, because maybe it'll give me just a different perspective so that I can talk to more people. Because that's one of the things, right? It's one of my favorite sayings is, I try to have an open mind, but not so open that my brain falls out.
And then also, like, to get to these uncomfortable conversations, what would you say to someone if they're trying to have, like, an uncomfortable conversation with someone who maybe doesn't want to have that uncomfortable conversation? Like, and, they're trying to, like, solve the problem with having the uncomfortable situation. Like, what would you say to either that person or the other person?
That's a good question. I would say when it comes to that, again, it comes back to it's being head on with people. It's not beating around the bush. It's not saying, it's not basically talking around it. It's basically saying, I want to have this conversation with you because I'm trying to get some information. I know that you don't want it, and you can stop it at any time if it gets too uncomfortable for you, but I would really like to have this conversation because I feel like it's the thing that's stopping us from evolving our relationship, from having deeper conversations, from all the, those different parts of, those kind of things.
Like, what do you think is going to be, like, the hardest challenge in that?
Helping people to get out of their own way. Because that's
like,
one of the common...
would you say their own head, too?
Yeah. Out of their own way, out of their own head. Because that's one of the things, right, is I've been a therapist and a life coach, and one of the hardest things is getting people to first recognize the story that you're telling yourself about the situation you're in. Because in any situation, in any interaction, there's a story that your brain is telling you about, oh, well, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make a mistake. This person doesn't really care what I have to say. So I really just, those kind of thoughts. And it's like, okay, you need to recognize your own kind of biases before you even step into a conversation. Because when you meet somebody new, or even when it's with someone that you've known for a while, you have these preconceived ideas of the way the thing should be instead of it just letting it be what it is. And it's a hard thing because all of us have been taught in one form or fashion that we have to guide kind of the way things are going. Otherwise, you don't know where it's going to go. We always want the control, right? You want control over the situation when that really is the largest lie that we tell ourselves, that we have control.
So do you think, like, a lot of, like, control, maybe, like, control issues per se, like, stem from, like, maybe people's anxieties or, like, maybe... because it is kind of mental, like, anxiety, all that. Do you think that kind of stems from people's just anxieties?
I think control issues predominantly start with every human being being born with that, with being born with fear. I think it's the biological component of fear, because there's a psychological and the biological component for fear. And the biological component for fear for every human being is, our entire evolutionary pattern, and especially the last 185,000 years of evolution, human beings, was hardcore survival. It was literally, if you go sleep in the wrong cave, you get eaten by a bear. If you do the wrong thing, if you eat the wrong mushroom, if you eat the wrong stuff, you can die. So it's all that survival stuff that's been passed down generation to generation to generation, genetically. That is all a part of us. And that's a piece of it, is that it's figuring out what's the fear story that I'm telling myself, because that's where it all starts. Because anxiety is just another name for fear. And that's what it is. It all comes down to what's the fear story you're telling yourself. And for a lot of people, it is the fear story is, I'm not worthy. I don't need, no one's going to care what I have to say. And even if they look like they care what I have to say, they really don't care, because everyone really just cares about themselves. That's what a lot of people can go through, and you get stuck in that. And then you begin to act that way. And then if you begin to act that way and other people begin to act that way, then you now have this wonderful self-fulfilling prophecy of nobody caring about anybody.
And then also like kind of also bringing in, I guess, people's anxieties. Like, what would you say to someone who like left maybe a situation where that person, or like the other person in the relationship, wasn't listening, whether it's family or, boyfriend, girlfriend relationship, stuff like that?
Yeah. I would say when it comes to those kind of things, when you have to make the hard choice to take a step back from a relationship because you don't feel like you're being heard, or that your feelings or your thoughts or whatever is being valued or validated, or they're actively attacking those kind of things against you, then the hard thing to do when you step out of that is just recognize that just because the other person didn't value what you had to say doesn't mean that what you have to say isn't valuable. Because the thing is depending on the audience changes the value, right? The more people you talk to, the more different types of people you talk to, the more in-depth conversations you have with people, the more you're able to get these little nuggets of information that makes you go, oh wow, okay, well, people did agree with me. People do understand my point of view. My point of view is valid. It's those things, because that's the hard thing, is when you're in a relationship where you feel like you're not being validated or valued for what you have to say or what you're bringing, that begins to erode your self-confidence. And when your self-confidence gets eroded, then you begin you start to kind of turn inward, and you start to not want to say as much because out of fear, right? That if I say this, they're just going to, they're just going to basically tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. They're going to tell me that I'm too young, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm this, or I'm that, or whatever it is that they're going to tell you to get you to be quiet, because what you've done in those moments is you've actually made them uncomfortable. So that means that you're hitting a nerve. And if you're hitting a nerve, that means that somewhere in what you said is some truth. And then when that happens, when you recognize that, you're like, oh, so I'm hitting a nerve. So I need to take that step back. I need to take that breath and ask myself that question. Is the energy I'm putting into this relationship, this person, this thing, this idea with this other person, is it worth my time, and is it worth my energy? Because those are the only two real commodities we as human beings have, is our time and our energy. Because without those two things, what do we really have? Not much.
All right. Let's see. Also, like, to kind of go with like self-esteem, like say someone did just leave a situation like that, and like, maybe they go into like a workplace, or like maybe walk into some new potential relationships, like friendships, anything like that. Like, and they think it's normal, like how's their previous relationship, like how that person talked to them. Is that like to do with like self-esteem, and how like like, do they see the world, maybe like their perspective?
Well, that's a good question, because what it comes down to is it always comes back to the way we see the world is our perception. And our perception can be changed through repeated, consistent exposure to the same thing. So if you're, let's say, in a relationship where every day when you come home and you try to talk about your day, the person's like, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear what you have to say. So then every day that you come home and you try and do that, you then feel like you're shut down. And so then you start to do it then every other day. And then you start to do it once a week. And then you start to do it once a month. And then you just stop doing that altogether, because that's what it is. Because the story that you're being told by this other person is, you're not valuable. What you have to say is not valuable. I don't want to hear it. I want you to do what I want you to do, and that's all I want from you. And then when that happens, if you then leave that relationship, you take that story with you out into the world. You may, I mean, once you get out of the relationship and you're in with other people and you talk to them and those kind of things, it may start to begin to heal. But now that wound is in there, that story is in there, and it may still pop up and it may still pull you back towards it, because all human beings are is the stories we tell ourselves.
All right. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit to get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
Let's see. So, where are you from?
I'm originally from South Dakota.
I've never been to South Dakota. I've only been to like 3 states. So, but I always think that's pretty cool. All right. Do you like to read books?
I do.
Okay. What books have changed your life the most?
The books, so one of the books, Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, that definitely changed the way that I looked at stuff. And I just love reading. So reading just in general changed my life. Like, I've read pretty much every Stephen King book that there is. I'm now working my way through the Jack Reacher series. Been on to book like 11. I love to read because everything that I read, from textbooks to just fun books, there's always something to pull out of it that can give you a different kind of glimpse into other people's lives and other ways of looking at things. One of my other favorite books is one from college, which is called Choice Theory. And I really like that book because it really brought into focus that everything we do is a choice. From the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed, we're all making it up as we go along. Everything is a choice. From the moment you open your eyes, you have a choice, right? Am I going to get out of bed, or am I going to hit the snooze button? And then, okay, I'm out of bed. Am I going to brush my teeth, or am I just going to go straight for coffee? What am I going to do, right? So you have all these thousands and thousands of little choices that happen throughout the course of the day that then shape your day. But by recognizing that everything is a choice, that means that at any time you can change direction. And that, for me, really changed the way that I view my work and my life and how I want to interact with people, because it gives me the ability to step back and say, if I don't like something, I don't have to do it. Nothing is forcing me to, except for me and the story that I'm telling myself.
Yeah, I think, choosing what you do in the morning is like sometimes it's hard. So
Yeah.
I guess maybe like make the right choices,
Yeah.
or I guess the right choices for your life.
Exactly.
What is the hardest challenge you've had to overcome in your life?
That would be this, what I talked about before, was the suicide of my mother, because I was with her 2 weeks before she did it, and she told me she was going to do it, and I went and talked to the doctors and all the different people that she was with at the time and told them that what she told me, and they basically told me that I didn't know what I was talking about, even though that's what I was doing for my profession. And so that was hard, because the system that I've been giving like so much of my time and my life to failed me in that moment. And so that spun me into burnout, grief, loss, depression, all of these things. And then from there, it spun into my life where I burned out of therapy, and I'd stopped doing therapy for a couple of years. And I started doing real estate, and then the real estate market collapsed. And so then so my wife and I lost everything. We had to go live with her parents and do that for a year and a half with our newborn son. And then I had to figure out, who did I want to be, because it basically broke me. So I had to figure out, who did I want to be? What kind of man did I want to be? What kind of husband did I want to be? What kind of father did I want to be? What kind of person did I want to be? What kind of therapist did I want to be? What did I want to do with the rest of my life? Because up until that point, I thought I knew. I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to do therapy, all this kind of stuff. I want to help people. That's what I want to do. And then when that happened, it derailed all the plans. And then, so after about 4 years of that, and then getting out of that, that's when I really began to create this idea of 1% change a day, of 15 minutes a day to change, because I did that to myself and for myself, because I had to get out of the hole that I got stuck in. That was, a lot of it was my own thinking of the way that I was perceiving the situation, because I felt guilty, I felt shame, I felt all these things, like somehow it was my fault that she made the choice because I didn't do enough. I now know, it's been 18 years now since it happened, that's complete and utter foolishness, because she made the choice. I didn't make the choice. I did everything I knew how to do to stop her from doing that, and it still didn't work. And so overcoming that has been one of the hardest parts of my life. Well, that and being a parent, because that's a whole different ball of wax.
Do you ever feel like when people, like, maybe if you have like clients who come in who say like, they've thought about it, or they've tried, they've
Mm-hmm.
tried to commit suicide, is it a lot of it like to do with like themselves or the people around them, or even maybe both?
It can be a combination of both, but usually it comes down to this again. It comes down to your thinking about the situation. Because what happens when you get into suicide, when you get into that thought process of thinking that life would be better off if you were not around, it really comes back to where it's suicidality tends to be a combination of the story I'm telling myself is everybody would be better off if I wasn't here, and I would be better off if I wasn't here. But when you hear that out loud, can you hear the fallacy in that logic? Because
Yeah.
how could you be better if you weren't here? Well, you can't because you're not here. How will everybody else be better if you're not here? Well, you can't because you're not here to help them make the change. So it's those pieces that when you get stuck into that mindset, it's the story that your brain repeats and repeats and repeats, that I'm just exhausted, I'm tired, I'm not doing any good, I'm not being good, I'm not feeling good, I'm just done. But it's just the story that you're telling yourself. And so what I usually tell people when they're going through that is, yes, feeling that way is valid. That's okay to feel that way. Those feelings are valid. But the actions you choose to do based on those feelings, that will now become forever. Because that's the thing. Your thoughts and your feelings are temporary. Give it 5 minutes. You'll probably have, in 5 minutes, 5 days, a couple of weeks, your mentality will change. But if you do this action, that now becomes this permanent thing that you can't recover from. Because sometimes the worst thing that I've seen is when I've had clients that have had attempted suicide. And the worst thing is when they fail at it, it makes their life actually worse, because the way that they attempted caused them brain damage or caused them all these other extra medical issues now because of what they just did, like liver problems, brain damage, asphyxiation problems, trouble breathing, trouble seeing. It totally changes the way that they can think about things. So that's the stuff, right? Is you don't know, because if it doesn't work, then you don't know what you're turning your life into. But that's the thing, is suicide it's a long-term solution to what is generally a short-term problem. But at that time, you can't see the end of it. And that's the issue, because you feel like this is my new forever. This will always be this way. But that's totally not the case, because life is long. Give it 6 months. Give it a year. Figure out a way. Go to therapy. Talk to a life coach. Get on medication. Do whatever you have to do to try to pull yourself out of that spiral and out of this thinking, which is really bad. It's just stinking thinking is really what it comes down to. And that's what it comes back to with everybody, is what we think about our situation creates the reality of the situation. And then the way we act in that situation creates the self-fulfilling prophecy that then reinforces the situation we're in, because what does our brain look for? Proof. So if we do things and act in ways that reinforce the situation, that then it creates the proof that we need, which is really just us making up the proof.
And then also to go around, like, like give it like some time. Do you ever like do like maybe like a 6 month plan? Like, say you give it 6 months before you make that decision, and say
Mm-hmm.
like each month or each
Yeah.
week of the month or something, you work on this.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever do that with any of your
Yeah,
clients,
that
or
that is a very
maybe
common
something?
thing that we do. It's basically you do safety planning where you work with them when they're feeling this way, and you then help them to really delve into what's the story. Check the story every day. Track the story every day. What is it telling you? What can you see is false? What do you think is real? Bring that back. You know, when people are suicidal and I see them in my practice, I see them basically like 2 times a week, 3 times a week if necessary, in order to help them continually to combat that negative story that they keep telling themselves, and help them pick it apart so that they can see that the story they're telling themselves is false, is completely false. And that's, but with most of those times, you also, they need to be on some kind of antidepressant medication or medical marijuana, or maybe try microdosing mushrooms, all these different things that they can do to help change their mentality and their process of the way they're looking at things. Because again, our perception is our reality. So if we can just shift that, and science has proven that if you can shift someone's perception 2%, it will begin to change the way they act in real life. That's not a big change. But for that person that's suicidal to shift to, okay, I'll try it for just one more day. I'll just get through today. If I can just make it through today, then tomorrow will be better. And if not better, at least I'll be around to continue to try.
Or at least continue to make it better.
Yeah, at least continue to try to make it better.
All right. Let's see. What's your favorite state?
My favorite state? Huh. It's an interesting thing. Well, I'm partial to South Dakota, but that's because I grew up there. But I would say my favorite state that I've lived in, I really enjoyed living when I lived in California, because I like the access to the beach and the water. It's where I learned to scuba dive, and I love scuba diving. And it's those kind of things, right? Where it's like the sun and the surf and the sand and all those kind of things. I was up in Northern California, so the water was cold, but I really enjoyed California.
Yeah, I've heard it's really hot in California, although I haven't been to California in years. But like,
It can be. It can
yeah,
be.
my mom's from California, so
Where's she from in California?
I think West Covina.
Okay, so that'd be slightly north. Is that slightly north, or is that south of Los Angeles? I think Covina's in the south, right? It's in Southern
I
California.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's
This
see.
is not a geography quiz. Don't worry.
What is your favorite country to visit if you've ever visited a country?
I've actually visited several countries, and I love them all in their own way. But for me, it has to be Ireland, because that's where my roots are from. And so I actually got to go to Ireland about, what was that, 2016? So I was there. So I got to go there and I got to do that with my dad, and we spent like a couple of weeks in Ireland with my dad and his wife and my wife, and we got to travel around there, and it was just the color of green there is just there's no other green I've ever seen in the world like it. I've also been to Puerto Rico, I've been to Cuba, I've been to the Cayman Islands, I've been to Hawaii, I've been to Canada, I've been to Peru. Where else have I been? I've been to other places, but I can't remember right now. But I've been to a lot of places. But it's one of those things that we've really been trying to instill that in our kids, in our kids, that you got to go see the world. You have to get out of where you're from. You have to get out of at least even the state that you're in. You have to go to a different state. Go to the south, go to the north, go to the east coast, go to the west coast. See the world. See the United States as a whole is gigantic. And it's different in every single place that I've been to. I've probably been to about 14 different states in the United States as well. And it's those pieces where the more you get out and travel, and the more you see other people, the more you realize that everyone is doing the same thing, no matter what language you speak, no matter what color you are, no matter what your customs are. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all just making it up as we go along, and we're trying to do the best we can for ourselves and for our family. And that's why I love getting to travel. COVID was not fun, so I hope that I get to do more traveling, because I really love it.
Do you think also traveling, like, maybe the world, do you think that helps with like your career and like, maybe seeing different people's perspectives?
It does, because that's my job as a therapist, is really the way I boil it down for people as a therapist and a life coach. My job is to basically be a professional secret keeper and advice giver. That's what I do. I laugh about what I do for a living, because I basically sit in an office, or I talk to people on the computer, or I talk to them on the phone, and I just give them advice about whatever's kind of going on in their life, about ways that they could make these small changes to have a better life. And it's a very fun job, because I have to also take into account where they're from, what's going on, what their background is, how they, if they're from a different country, if they're just even from a different state. The thing is that I've learned is that common sense is not common. Common sense is basically a combination of what your parents taught you, where you lived, in the area you lived, what the area around you tells you common sense is, and then what it is. Like someone growing up in South Central Los Angeles versus me growing up in Black Hills of South Dakota, completely different version of what common sense is.
Let's see. What goals are you pursuing right now?
Right now, I am working on finishing writing out and recording all the curriculum for my life coaching program. I am doing podcasts. I am seeing more patients and doing more therapy with people. I'm thinking about trying to figure out how to finish writing a book. I've gotten about halfway through, and I've kind of hit some writer's block on that. And I'm getting my oldest into high school, so I'm working on helping him transition into high school, and my youngest is going into middle school, and so I'm just working on just trying to be a present father and a good husband, and just I'm just trying to be as present as I can be in my life, because I read recently a couple of weeks ago that between 90 to 93% of my time with my kids is going to be up by the time when they're 18 years old. And so that means I only have 7 to 10% of the rest of my life to spend with them, because they're going to leave and go to college and start a career or move to a different state or maybe a different country or all those different things. And so it made me really reevaluate the way that I have been with my kids. It's like, oh yeah, I'm tired at the end of the day, but if they ask me to do something, before it was like, well, no, I'm too tired. No, I'm feeling burned out. No, I don't want to do that. Now it's like, yes, I need to spend time with you. Yes, let's go. I have a half hour. Let's go do this thing. Yes, let's go do these things together so that we can have that connection, because at first I was like, there's no way it's 90 to 93%. That's way too high of a number. But then I just thought about my own life. Yeah, for the first 18 years, I was in my parents' home. And then after that, it was maybe every quarter. And then it was maybe every 6 months. And then maybe it was once a year or twice a year for holidays. And then maybe it was every 2 years. And then, and then, and then. And the time frame just got longer and longer and longer.
And what do you think when parents say maybe their kids are like, "Oh, do you want to play?" Like when they're younger, either
Mm-hmm.
siblings or even for parents. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say "Oh, let's play," and then, "Oh, well, I'm too busy."
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you say to that?
I would say that when your kids ask you to play, give them a time limit. Say, yeah, I'll play with you for 15 minutes. I'll play with you for a half hour. Yes, let's do that. Let's make it this focused time for us to do this, because anyone you can find, if you break things down into small pieces, like 15 minutes, like 30 minutes, you can find 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes to be present and be connected with another person. And that's the hard thing, right? Because we're always like, oh, well, you want to do this, it means it's going to be for hours. No, it doesn't have to be for hours. It can be for 15 minutes. It can be for 30 minutes. But in that 15 to 30 minutes, it could be as simple as, let's go read a book together. Let's go, oh, you want to, like my boys loved to play, like when they were younger, they loved to play like cars and all these things. And they had these entire stories in their brain of the way we were going to do stuff. And so I just played along with whatever the story they created. Did it mean that I enjoyed it? Not necessarily. Sometimes I thought it was ridiculous and boring, but I still did it because that's how you create connection, is you do things, and you sometimes just got to keep your opinions to yourself, because that's how I felt in the beginning. But usually by the end of it, I was having a great time with them too, doing stuff and building tracks and wanting to do more. And then they were like, okay, I'm done. And I was sad that we were done.
Yeah, I even have my little sister. She goes and runs around. She's like, "Okay, I'm done." But I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't.
Like I was just getting into it. What's going on, right?
I was like, "Yep, that's what I think. That's what kids do."
Yeah.
What are your favorite hobbies and pastimes?
Well, one, I love scuba diving. Scuba diving is one of my favorite things to do. Now that I live in the middle of the country, I don't get as much of a chance to do that anymore. But that's something that I really enjoy, and so I try to make time for that. I really like reading, so I really try and make time for reading and doing that kind of stuff. I make sure that I take time for myself and do like meditation. I like archery. I have a compound bow, and I go do archery in the backyard, and it's really a Zen kind of practice for me, because with that, literally, it just takes that much of a difference in height from hitting the target or completely missing the target. It doesn't take much at all. So it's really about being very precise and being very calm and being very focused. And I like those kind of things. And spending time with my kids, spending time with my wife, and spending time with my dog, and doing all those kind of things. And this weekend we're going to spend time with my dad and with his wife, and spend time with my sister, and spend time with family, and just really kind of do that. Because when I was working, I worked hospice for a while as a social worker, and one of the things that I always remember is for the about 19 different people that I worked with while they were dying, the one thing they always said was, I wish I would have spent more time with the people that I loved. I wish I would have said yes to those moments of things and stuff instead of, I wish I would have said yes to going on the trip. I wish I would have said yes to just having breakfast every morning with someone. I wish I would have said yes more and been not so caught up in, well, I have to go do this. I have to be busy. And so I really try to make sure that I'm present in people's lives, that when they're in front of me, when I'm with them, that I'm 100% there, because that's the biggest regret that I've heard so many people have is I wasn't there. I was kind of there, but I wasn't there. I missed out because I chose to miss out.
And like, what would you say, like, how do you think people would be like maybe a perfect like work-life balance for
Mm-hmm.
someone?
That depends on the person, right? For some people, if you're a type A person working, 20 hours a day, but that's also where you get your friends and your family and your connection and stuff from because you don't have anything outside of that. For them, that might be the perfect work-life balance. For me, because I have a family and a wife and kids and all this other stuff, I try to work between 8 to 10 hours a day, usually less, as less I can, I do, because I want to spend time with them, because I know that my time with them is short. And then as my kids age into high school and going to college and breaking out into the world, then I'll ramp up and do a little bit more work. But I always continue to go back and make sure that with that, I always separate work and life. And I do that by creating a very mindful practice of, especially in my line of work, I have to leave it at the office. Because I worked from home for a decade when I lived in California, and that was the worst experience of my life because I couldn't separate work from home, because the only thing that separated it was I had a door on my office, and whenever I'd close the door, I knew work was on the other side, but it was right there. And that's why I think working from home can be a great and amazing flexible thing, but it also can be that thing where you get stuck. Like my wife, literally after about 2, 3 years of me working at home, had to kick me out of the house once a night, once a week, to go out with friends because I wouldn't, because I just stayed there. I'd like go out. Basically, my routine was get up, take the kids to school, which was great. I had an hour and a half commute to work from home. That was fun. Get up, take the kids to school, come home, work all day, prepare dinner, put the kids to bed, do it again. And that's what I did 5 days a week. And then on the weekend, I'd take the dog for a walk and go to the gym occasionally and go to the grocery store. But everything was within like literally 5 minutes of the house. So I was literally almost homebound for 10 years. And that was unhealthy. And my wife saw that. She's like, you're getting more irritable. You're hating being at home. You're not liking this stuff. You need to go spend time with your friends. Get out of the house. Go do something at least one night a week. Get out. I didn't like it at the time, but she was right, as she usually is.
And do you think having like routines in either like your life is important for someone?
Oh, yeah. Routines, I think routines are the foundation of creating a good, solid life. I have a routine that I followed religiously now ever since I created it, back when I was getting out of that burnout and stuff. And what I do every morning is I spend 3 minutes meditating and 2 minutes journaling in the morning to kind of set the tone of what I want to get from the day. And then at lunchtime, I stop and do some meditation, and then I journal again. It's basically 3 and 2, 3 and 2, 3 and 2. I do that for breakfast, lunch, and after dinner to remind myself and to help keep myself on track so that I am meeting the goals that I want for the day. And I try and make my goals very simple. I have no more than 2 goals that I have every day. And I've had the same 2 goals that I've used every day for probably the last 12 years or so. And mine are simple because they're very focused on what I want. And mine are, my first goal professionally is when I see someone have that little flickering light bulb moment when I'm talking to them, to keep focusing on that moment and help them get that light bulb and that idea so bright that that light bulb blows up so that they can finally begin to move through and make that process of change. Sometimes that takes one session, sometimes it takes 7 months for them to get there. But you keep working with them on that until they see that they can change. And then, so luckily for me, I get to work with 5 to 8 people a day, every day. So that's a pretty easy goal to meet. I just have to do it with one person. So it helps. That's how I know that I'm professionally doing well. And personally, for me, it's be present. Get my head out of my phone. Get my head out of the computer. Get my head out of a television set. Be present. Have conversations. Be in front of people. Do that. Have real connection, because it's so easy to mistake Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, those kind of things as, oh, I connected with this person. No, you didn't. You clicked a button that said like, or you posted a quick comment. But that stuff is all curated content. It's like 1% of their life. You don't know what's really going on with them. Reach out. Actually have a conversation. The amount of times that you can reach out and talk to somebody, you don't know when the next time or last time you may get a chance to do that. It's like, I often think about the last time I was with that group of friends when I was like probably 14, 15, and we were just hanging out and playing around in the neighborhood. I didn't know when the last day was that we would ever do that, right? And you look back and you're like, well, if I would have known, I would have cherished that time so much more than not, right? Because we don't. We're just going through life. We're just living our life, not thinking about that kind of stuff.
And then also, like, do you think people realize like too late that it's maybe like to cherish those moments like when it's too late?
Yeah, that that's why funerals and weddings and major milestone birthdays are always so important to do, or have, or celebrate even the small wins too, not just the big ones. But those are the ones we have to remember, right? You remember the first funeral, or the funeral you went through for a friend, and you got to see all these other people that you hadn't seen for a while, or this big milestone birthday for a relative where all the relatives got together and it was almost like a family reunion. These kind of moments, right? These are those things that get burned into your brain and let you go, wow, why don't we do this more often? And I can't tell you how many times after one of these things, like, why don't we do this for a fun reason? Why do we have to get together only for a funeral? Why do we have to get together only for these things? Why can't we get together just because we want to? And it's because life gets busy and we prioritize things backwards most of the time, because it's what happens, right? There's a billion different things to pull you in a billion different directions at every second of the day, and it's just getting worse.
And like, do you think it's important to prioritize like yourself, like maybe, like time to yourself, maybe not with everyone else?
Yes, I think self-care is not selfish. That's what most people have been either taught or what they think, is that if I take a half hour for myself every day, then I'm being selfish, because that's a half hour I could give to my kids. That's a half hour I could give to my spouse. It's a half hour I could give to clients. It's a half hour I could give to somebody else. But the thing is that it comes back to one of the things that they often taught me in graduate school is a dry well gives no water. So if you don't take the time to do those things that fill you back up, that give you energy, that give you a feeling of knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing how you want to be, if you don't have those things, if you don't take those moments, life is not going to give them to you. You have to take them. Because there's always something else that's going to say, no, no, I need your attention. Look at me. Look at me. Come on, over here, look at me. There's always going to be something that's going to be doing that. But you saying, no, no, I'm going to take 5 minutes in the morning to meditate and journal to frame my day. I'm going to take 5 minutes at lunch to meditate and journal to make sure that I'm still on the right track. I'm going to take 5 minutes at dinner, after dinner, and meditate and journal to make sure that I did what I set out to do today. If you just do that, that will begin the process of giving you that space to say, I am making and meeting the things that I want out of my life. And that's one of the most important things I can tell people. Is one of my favorite things that my crisis intervention teacher at school told me, which I'll never forget, is there's 2 ways you can live your life. And especially if you want to be a therapist and you want to be a helper. And it's, you have the ability in your life to do one of two things. You can either be the lightning rod, where people are going to throw their stuff at you, but as a lightning rod, all a lightning rod does is it takes the energy and drains it right into the ground so nothing gets burned, scorched, or destroyed. But if you're holding on to the lightning rod, that's the second way you can live your life. You're holding on to the lightning rod, and for some reason, all you smell is Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that's because that's you. Because you are literally cooking yourself every day because you keep taking everybody else's stuff on. And instead of letting go of it and recognizing that this is mine, that is yours. I can help you with yours, but I will not take it from you. Because all that does is make me smell chicken cooking. And that's me, and I don't want to do that. And I've done that. That's what I did like the first 3 years as a therapist. I was horrible at boundaries. I didn't heed that at all. I almost burned out the first 3 years I was doing this because I couldn't separate me from them. That kind of thing. It's where you learn how to care, but not care. Because you can't care all the time. You will cook yourself. And yet we try to do that.
And like, what would you also say? Like, say you put the boundary in place. Like, I can't, I
Yeah.
can't take this on. And the
Yeah.
other person's kind of with that pushback of, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, I do everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where then you talk about that with them. You say, okay, well, you say you do everything, but that also is a fallacy. Because in a relationship, it can't be 100% one person doing one thing. Because that the math doesn't work out. The only way you can do 100% of anything in a relationship is if the relationship is just with you. If there's nobody else, then you can do 100%. But anybody else in the relationship is going to be some variation of 60, 40, 80, 20, 90, 10, whatever it is. But again, that math also comes from your perception of the relationship, right? If they say, I always, you never, that's a problem because that means there's red flags in the relationship because they're feeling like they're doing so much and not getting enough from you that it creates this frustrating pattern with them where they think that they do everything and you do nothing. But that doesn't work because the only way for them to do everything is if it's just them, and that's not a relationship. That's just you in a room by yourself.
Oh, let's see. Who has made the most influence in your life?
My mom and my dad, they made the most influence because my dad gave me the engineering part of him because he's an engineer. So he gave me the really logical problem solving piece of things. And also buried underneath all that engineering stuff, he has just this way with words that when he would write me a birthday card or when he would send me a note, it would be this depth that I didn't know was there. He is very much the still waters run deep kind of guy. And my mom, because she was an unlicensed social worker, that taught me that everybody is deserving of a chance to recover and become better. And so by having those two things combined in my life, it's allowed me to just really look at the world in a very unique perspective because I can look at things from the emotional side of things while breaking it down from kind of a analytical engineering side of things so I can help people understand things in a way that makes sense so they can put it together in their own life so that they can move forward and push through and move through things. And so those two, and my wife especially, she's been my biggest fan and biggest champion throughout all this stuff. And my kids too, because they make me grow and change in ways I didn't know that I needed to grow and change. So lots of people, anybody that I meet.
And who did you want to be like when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I wanted to be an FBI behavioral profiler. So I wanted to go catch serial killers for a living. That's what I wanted to do. So like, the characters in like Alex Cross and James Patterson novels or things like that. But as you can see, I decided I'd much rather help people before they die instead of after they die because I worked in a maximum security prison during graduate school. And that really brought home this is what my life would be. It would be steeped in this darkness of trying to track these people that have such aberrant behavior. And I decided that's not me. I'm an optimist. I've been an eternal optimist my whole life. And I couldn't just keep being in the dark like that, because I felt myself change during that time I worked in the maximum security prison, because I was dealing with rapists, murderers, child molesters, all these people every day, and talking to them and trying to get them to understand you had a choice in what you did. You made this choice. And that was one of those things that really changed the way I looked at things. So that's where I started, and of course I ended up doing this. And so now I don't know, I just want people to feel better. I just want people to not have to suffer. That's really where I'm coming from.
Where's your favorite place to vacation?
Ooh. Any place where I can go scuba diving. Any place where there's a beautiful body of water where I can go scuba diving. One of my favorite places that my wife and I went to was we went to Tahiti a long time ago, probably about 13 years ago. We were in Tahiti and scuba diving there, and we got to swim with like sharks and do all those kind of stuff, and it was just great to just be fully unplugged. So anytime, like camping, anytime I can just unplug from life for a while and just be, I love it.
Or what would you say some of the best places are to go scuba diving for anyone watching who might want to go?
Ooh, let's see. Well, I really enjoyed scuba diving when I was in the Cayman Islands, because it's the amount of wildlife and marine life you see is amazing. I think Monterey, Monterey, if you can stand 55-degree water in Monterey, California, that's amazing. The Point Lobos Reserve, you get to swim with harbor seals and different things like that where they chase you. It was one of my favorite memories there was my best friend and I were doing a sunrise dive, and it was during brown jelly migration season. And we laid on the bottom of the ocean for 20 minutes and watched hundreds and hundreds of brown jellyfish just swim right above our faces, like get this close to us and stuff. Because you're in cold water, you just have to go like this to cover your cheeks, and that way they can't sting you. And so we were completely covered from head to toe, and they just were over us for like 20, 30 minutes. It was amazing. So I'd say any place there's warm water, do it. Any place you can figure out a place to do it, just go. Just go underwater. I got to go to Cancun with my son, who learned how to scuba dive recently, and that was really fun. We got to do some wreck diving together. So just, if you get a chance, just do it. It's a totally different world, and it's amazing.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's a good question. Well, let's see. My oldest will be in college. My youngest will be in the middle of high school. So still being a dad, still being married, hopefully on a stage somewhere talking to people and trying to help more people figure out how to break through their feelings of burnout and imposter syndrome and exhaustion, and just helping more people.
All right. What motivates you to get up in the morning? And what are
Helping
you
people.
driven by?
Helping people. Helping people get through their pain, helping people recognize their pain, helping people let go of their pain, just helping people. That's the core of who I am. It's the core of who I've always been, and that's the thing that my mom instilled deepest in me, is everybody's deserving of the ability to change if you can give them the chance to do that, and if you can give them the right tools, you can accelerate that change. And that's who I am.
All right. Do you think you're an introvert or an extrovert?
I am an extroverted introvert, where I am really good at being an extrovert, but when it comes right down to it, I would much rather curl up with a book in front of a fire, or be camping, or be by myself, or be with just a very small amount of people. But I can be an extrovert because I've learned how to do it over the course of my life. And it's kind of interesting, because you can change that too. That's not a hard and fast rule. But if I had to say one way or the other, I'd say I'm probably like 60% introvert, 40% extrovert.
Or at least extrovert when you have to be?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, what do you think your spirit animal is?
Ooh, wow, that's a good one. I don't know. I would probably say a harbor seal, because the thing I loved about that is when I was diving with them, they were always so playful. They were like the puppies of the sea. They would swim behind us, pull on our fins. They'd swim in front of us and look at us with these gigantic eyes, and it's just looked so free and just so amazing, and they didn't have a care in the world.
Are you a night owl or an early bird?
Definitely a night owl.
Yeah.
All the way, no doubt.
I don't know anyone who's an early bird. It's like, how do you
Yeah,
get up?
yeah. I don't get it. I don't get it. I can do it if I have to. I don't like to, but I can do it if I have to.
What was the best year of your life, and what was the worst year of your life?
Well, we already talked about the worst year of my life, and that was the year that my mom died. The best year of my life would be, it's a split, would be when my first and second child was born. Watching them come into the world and becoming a father for the first and second time. I would say those are the best years of my life. And hopefully more to come.
What is the most embarrassing moment of your life?
That would be going out with friends, drinking too much, and waking up naked in my front lawn.
Yeah, that's all right. Let's see. What superpower do you wish you had?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to say, flight or mind reading or those things, but I think mind reading would get overwhelming. I think flight would be amazing, except for all the bugs you get in your teeth. So I'd say probably flight. Probably flying.
All right. What opinion do you have like maybe it could be controversial or not? What
Mm-hmm.
opinion do you have that most people might not have?
That change is a requirement of life. That you can resist it all you want, but it's going to happen. So it's easier just to go with it.
Think what is or what do you think some red flags are in maybe relationship?
If someone tells you what you can or can't do on a consistent basis, that's an obvious red flag. If you continually try to give love to them in whatever way you do and you don't get anything back, that is, or you get back very minimal, then that is a red flag. If people don't take your ideas seriously, or they don't even let you feel like you can have your own ideas without them constantly putting you down, that's definitely a red flag. And anytime there's any kind of abuse, be it emotional, physical, sexual, anything like that, that is the red flag. Get out. Just get out. It's hard, but you'll thank yourself in the future for it.
How do you how do you think you set healthy relationship or boundaries in a relationship?
Know who you are. Know what you'll tolerate. Know what your must haves are. Know what your can't stands are, and know what you'll tolerate. And literally write it down. Make a list of those things. And then go through that list whenever you're in a relationship with someone and say, okay, is it falling more on the stuff I can stand? Is it more tolerate and the stuff that I'm good with? Or is it more in the stuff that I can't stand? Because if you don't do that kind of stuff, you'll never know. Because this will tell you one thing, but if you put it on paper, you'll see it completely different.
All right, and last question. Have you changed because of your wife? And if so, what changed?
My wife has helped me to not be a people pleaser because going into our relationship, I was still very much stuck in that. And one of the first things she said to me is, I can't have you just say yes all the time. I need you to have an opinion. I need you to tell me your opinion. Whether I like it or not is immaterial. If you don't tell me your opinion, then we can't grow together because then it'll just be me dragging you through life. And I don't want to do that. That's not what I signed up for. And that has been the biggest thing for me that changed the way I am is because I thought I'd already beaten being a people pleaser by that time, but obviously not because she keeps me on the straight and narrow with that.
All right, and that's all the questions I have for you today.
All right.
So thank you for being on my podcast.
Yes, thank you.
And also, anytime you ever need to be on a podcast again, you can contact me.
Hey, I would love to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I like her. She's fun.